here.
All right, now we're live on YouTube too. Good to go. Good to go. All right. Oh, we got someone else hopping in the room too. Nice. Welcome, Saul. Awesome. Well, I think we can get started. I don't know if Andrew, if you want to introduce yourself and we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jacob. So Andrew Verbancore, I am the partner and CEO at Headway, and kind of throughout that time have played many different roles, designer, product manager, developer, and kind of in addition to that, before starting Headway, has had a lot of experience starting startups, joining startups, hiring teams, and so I'm excited to really open this time up to everybody and the questions that you have and the things that we found as best practices, and just help you learn from our experiences and our recommendations. But yeah, I'm calling in from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So great to be here.
Awesome. All right, I guess I can introduce myself. My name is Jacob Miller. I'm the marketing and brand manager at Headway. Um, I just, a lot of the things I do at Headway more internal things like this with events and live streams and email marketing and all that kind of stuff. But my background has been more formally in video production and photography, and more advertising, the advertising world. Um, but yeah, I'm also here today to help anybody if they have any questions on marketing, for their startup, or just trying to get some traction and find your first customers and where you can go to get them. So happy to answer any questions like that today. Um, and that's about it for me. So yeah, alrighty. I think we have a couple questions actually that I found. Um, I was just kind of looking through some of the questions. Um, on the subreddit for startups on reddit.com, and there's always like really interesting questions on there because people get really specific and sometimes they're really broad. But I think we can start in here, um, and I think the first question we can tackle just to kind of get warmed up here is, there's a guy named Mr. Telly on Reddit, and he asked, what's the best approach to launch beta software? It's past internal testing, but it isn't in production with customers yet. There's some more details here. We've been working on some Sisense BI tooling, so I think business intelligence tooling, and it's now ready for release as beta. Ideally, I'd like to find 10 customers to take our software and work with us, test the code, put forward their own needs and requirements that we'll implement. They'll get it for free. We get testing, market exposure, and a roadmap of useful features. So he wants to know, is there a model that we can follow? Um, and I guess, has anyone tried this in a niche market, and what have you found?
It's a lot of questions in there.
It
I
is a
think
lot in there. Yeah.
the first thing, like, what's the best approach to launch beta software? I would say the answer to many questions is it depends. I think
Hmm.
for you, it's going to depend on, and what we try to do here and recommend our clients is to prioritize learning. Like, so what version of the software or process or offering is going to help you learn the most, the quickest, and with the least amount of investment? So a lot of cases, that's like doing it manually. That's using no code tools, even just using like a Google Sheet with a Twilio integration and Zapier to be able to deliver value, and really learn about the mechanisms for how people perceive that. Because at the end of the day, and this depend, like, obviously a BI tool is more complex than a B2C tool. But a BI tool, for example, would probably need access to all of your systems. You'd need to integrate to all these different areas. And, from that standpoint, it makes sense. But I think there's ways that you could likely learn ahead of just launching a BI tool and getting their data, and maybe just saying, hey, send us your data and we'll do what the tool is going to do. And every week we'll give you an output of what our recommendations are, rather than investing a ton of time in automating that, figuring out, like, are the insights and the things that you deliver to them valuable enough on a weekly basis. And then the next part is a little bit about, just looking at it here, a little bit about they get the software for free. And so we work with, and know a lot of SaaS companies that work with Scott and his team over at Sales Qualia. And I think their approach to pilots is really good in that, one of the things, I don't know if he said it or this is a realization, but like a free pilot is like on its way to becoming a dead pilot, meaning that because there's no investment from somebody on the other side, they're less likely to be bought into the data that it needs, the process that you're asking for, the feedback that you actually need. And they're kind of just seeing it as like, yeah, we'll do this and it sounds great. But you really need to, I mean, a lot of times in the market, they say, oh, you have to be 10 times better than your competitors, but you almost have to be like 50 times better to even get their attention and really self-serve what the value is up to them. So I would recommend getting paid pilots and getting that. Obviously, them voting with their time, and if they can agree to a specific level of engagement and feedback with you, that's valuable. But really, the next step is like paid with, hey, maybe it's just a discount, but there's still some exchange of monetary value, so you can get to that from them. And so hopefully, like before you get to that point, I guess one of the themes is before you get to inviting 10 customers on is hopefully you've already been working with a couple really closely to define out and uncover and manually deliver either the answers that they need from a BI perspective or, the insights they need. So the best launch is the one that helps you learn the quickest and with the least amount of investment, just to kind of summarize.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew. And we'll definitely be sharing that answer with him on Reddit once this recording goes live. So hopefully he finds that helpful. And Mr. Telly, if you have any questions after that, you can answer to us on Reddit. So looking forward to it. So this next one, um, he has a kind of a funny name, but we'll take it. Young Schloop asks, looking for advice on how to vet or where to find a web/app developer. So it looks like he has some experience in programming. He's an undergrad, and he's like, I'm currently in grad school and have a fair amount of coding experience. The problem is all my programming experience is data related, so like Python, SQL, and I don't have a first clue about web development or app development. I only say the above to let you know that I'm serious about not looking to cut corners. I'm just looking for advice on a viable partner. And then he goes in talking about how he only has about $10,000 in budget to spend on an MVP. Um, and so he's kind of looking for how can I get an MVP launched for under 10 grand, and what are the methods that a serious developer or in finding a serious developer. I guess maybe should he find a developer or should he go a different route? Just curious what you think.
Yeah, I would, if you have a development experience and experience related to um, database design and things like that, sounds like you have some SQL and other knowledge that would lie into that. I would lean into tools like Bubble that really simplify the UI for you, where you're not doing any web or app dev. Really, you're doing visual design, but inside a tool that empowers you to do workflows and things like that. And we've been really leaning more into that space for this exact scenario where time and resources is limited and learning is limited. So like it would point us to that. So I would encourage young Schloop to, to kind of, if you're unclear about the value that you're going to provide quite yet, like back to the learning about the first question, like what's the best beta to launch? So one, learning about the problem that you have and making sure it's valuable for customers, and then two, being able to iterate really quickly in this phase. So not necessarily meeting a developer, you're really trying to maximize your learning. And I think a lot of people shortcut to, well, hey, if I'm going to build this app, I need a developer. I actually gave a talk on this for Startup Wisconsin that included no-code tools and prototyping and how you can go it alone really to learn and de-risk your idea without developers. And we can link that in here. But it was I'm trying to think of the title. You don't need developers to launch your startup. And I think a lot of people think of launch as their app into the world, full scale vision, their full vision, but really it's like you're launching an offering, and that could be manually, that could be a service, that could be, really the customer cares about the outcome that you're delivering to them. So if you can kind of take a step back and say, do I really need a developer? I mean, do I understand the problem enough? Do I have demonstrated demand from people? Have I created an offer? Do you even know what to tell them to develop, right? And so I think that's why stepping back and focusing more on the customers you're solving it for, the problem you're solving, and how big it is, then you can work your way into the solution. And with your experience, being data related, and you'd be able to design the database out, create some specific workflows. And there's a big community around Bubble and other no code tools that would allow you to really figure out and go it alone without, hiring a developer or trying to raise a round without any traction. There's other tools like a Dalo. There's roughly 100 plus no code tools that you could leverage to try and build your version 1 and gain traction.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how much validation he has for his current idea. So I think everything you said would be super helpful to him. I mean, hopefully he has like all the evidence he needs to build this thing. But definitely, we'll definitely share this clip with you and this answer, Young Schloop, and we'll also send a link to that video that Andrew had mentioned from Startup Week. So hopefully you can find that helpful. Awesome.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, like I've been on the other side of that where we had a great idea and we spent, 12 to 18 months building it, and like it was the wrong idea. Like nobody wanted it. We had a launch. I think I've told this story before, but we had a launch party and all of our friends were there and some of our potential clients were there. They're crickets like weeks and months after, and like just totally misaligned with the market. So really focusing on that upfront strategy is going to help you go faster ultimately in the long run, even though it feels like less progress because you don't have, what looks and feels like an app. You're really trying to build a business, and sometimes that can be slower than expected.
Yeah. All right. I think we can go to this next question. I found some awesome questions from Quora. Even though they're a little bit older, I think that they're still super relevant. And two of them are kind of similar, but I think they have different answers. But the first one, it's a lot of the questions on there are anonymous, but the person asked, every time I come up with an idea to build an app, there's something similar already available. Should I still go ahead and build my app? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say even peeling this back from like the assumption is that I should build an app, right? I think what you're looking for is like an unmet need or an underserved need in a market. And this can go back to, the whole Facebook came after Friendster, came after MySpace, came after, all these other networks. And you could argue today that Facebook's maybe out of touch with where the markets are going just based on the ethics of the company and kind of the market things that are happening. But Amazon wasn't the first bookseller online, right? There was companies that sold books, but they took more of a logistics approach to it and said, hey, these top 200,000 titles or whatever it is, to 3 million, I forget what Bezos said in his kind of early interview. We're going to handle the logistics of it and kind of set up the ability for people to purchase things quicker from one place. So I would say like the biggest thing to really understand and how you can start to get a view on it is taking a look at the app's reviews and seeing what people are saying. Like if you do uncover a need and your solution aligns directly with a competitor, what is the market saying about them? Like what are people what's their sentiment and reviews? Have you tried it? Like and I think like partnering that with the insights you'll gather by interviewing potential customers, and understanding what progress they're trying to make in their own life, you can say like, yeah, this doesn't get them there, or this doesn't get them there. You ultimately need to have a theory about what the opportunity is. And that goes into a talk actually Robert Ryan gave a couple of weeks ago on like having a hypothesis and a theory of where your opportunity is. If your only opportunity is, I want to build an app that's just like Tinder, but for, let's say, truckers, like that could be a niche market. Like you could have the same app mechanism, but you would have to really go to truckers and say like, are truckers looking for other truckers to date, or right, and do some interviews and do some reconnaissance to really understand like, do people want this, right? Even though the technology is the same and the solution is the same, changing who it's for could create a market opportunity for you. So I would say you shouldn't just build your app just because you had the idea for an app. I would say kind of peeling it back into what motivations that people have, what, almost like an empathy map. What is a user thinking, feeling, doing? What progress are they trying to make? How can you interject some solution, and it might be an app, into that space? And so really, all the themes that we're seeing here and that we're talking about is like software is really about serving people. And so for us to understand people, we need to start with people. We need to uncover kind of like the journeys that they're on and what they're trying to do, and really dig into that. And then we can kind of connect a through line through to what the solution is. And so we talk about this all the time with new teams that we're potentially talking about working with, and new startups and corporate innovation teams. But like starting with the customer and who it's for, and getting crystal clear. The next step would be defining the problem and making sure it's valuable enough. Customers recognize it's a problem, they're willing to pay for it. The next step is like designing a value prop that aligns. And then really, this is where your app comes in, is like, hey, I have an app and that's my solution. So creating a through line through those 4 things are going to help you figure out, like, is this the right opportunity, for me, or is there an opportunity here? And yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But really peeling it back away from the solution to, who am I serving and what am I going to help them do? And then, being able to go forward through that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew. We had someone in the chat, Andrew S. Asked a question, but deleted it. It was about the tools for app. I think it was tools for app validation. I was gonna grab it, but Andrew, you can totally. Okay, here we go. Uh, could you please give a link to a tool you recommend to use before you try to build an app? I guess, could you be more specific? I think, I guess it depends what you're trying to achieve. Each part of the process can be a little different, right? I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of solution you're building, I guess. Babel.
Oh, Bubble.
Oh, Bubble.
Bubble.io.
Yep. Here, we can grab the link and drop it in there for you.
The other one that ties directly, and we've been playing around a little bit, is Bravo Studio. So bravostudio.app, and that's for mobile app creation. And you can create those out of Figma, which is a design tool that we leverage quite a bit. There's also like a lot of other tools that you could use depending on what your idea is. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm grabbing the links for them.
Yeah, depending on what your idea is, like you could, we saw this from an entrepreneur earlier this week in a demo of what they're doing, like a Google Sheet linked up with Zapier and Twilio. Like you can find a way to serve somebody value without creating an app, right? And you can do it over SMS, or you could do it over email. You can create a newsletter. I think, a lot of times when we talk with entrepreneurs and just look at the companies out there, a lot of the mindset is like, if you build it, they'll come. Hey, if we build an app that feels really great, that looks really great, that will be successful. And the reality is, like, it's much, much harder than that to change behavior. And, part of that is like messaging and what you're doing. The other part of it is, understanding what's the most valuable problem that you could solve for them, given the space you're operating in, and then doing it in an intuitive way. And so I think there's ways you can do it with spreadsheets if you're willing to be scrappy, and what's kind of called a Wizard of Oz or concierge MVP, where you're doing work on the background. I think there's I'm trying to remember the quote. It was about productivity, but it applies to startups where essentially, one of the worst things you could do is optimize a process that shouldn't even exist, right? So like understanding that that like, for you to go from delivering value with an email and, let's say, a Google spreadsheet and maybe an SMS text that you send out, and serving value up to somebody that way, if that can't move the needle for somebody, and they're getting the value you hypothesize, and they're getting the value that you believe is going to help them buy or purchase or continue to use, making that and putting that into an automated form in an app likely isn't going to help get them there either. And so just understanding that, like, those are just 2 different solutions, but to a user, they're the same outcome. So if, like, you can't get there with a manual means, doing it through an app likely isn't going to get them there either.
Oh, we have a question over on the YouTube chat. Is no code stack useful to have as a UI and UX designer?
I would say yes. I think it depends on where you're playing. I mean, you can if your goal is to create new ventures and new startups and ideas, like having no code in your toolkit helps you bridge the gap. I kind of mentioned this in the talk that Jacob mentioned, but bridge the gap from prototype testing and kind of hypothetical, would you use this? What's your perspective? All of that into like actually giving somebody the opportunity to fill out a profile or engage with an app a certain way. It helps you bring it into kind of a true offering that you can sell somebody, and be able to really test demand that way. Where the prototypes and things as a UX designer fall short is like we get a lot of perspective around how people perceive it, what they would compare it to, maybe some solutions around usability and improvements. But it misses the opportunity for us to give them something where we're not present and we're not walking them through. And that's how people experience your software is, your message has to be crystal clear on your landing page. Your message has to be crystal clear in onboarding. They have to know exactly what to do in your app. And those are all challenges that you won't understand until you're not there. So like user testing can get you so far when you ask what this does, what that does, but really giving them the opportunity to do it and then being able to measure that through, intercom events or Google Analytics or just understanding how people are engaging with your app will help give you confidence that somebody's putting time towards it or they're buying. If you're doing like a Stripe integration, you can collect payment. All of those things are super valuable. So if your goal is to kind of be a one-man army where you can launch a startup, design it, make it beautiful, be able to launch your own application offering, like I would say definitely lean into no code. And I think it's going to continue to get bigger. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, just of the movement in the space, but lots of opportunity. And I know lots of companies that are looking for people to really leverage no code tools at their companies and have that skill set.
Yeah, I actually just dropped a awesome article. There was a UX designer that just shared their experience making an app using a no-code tool and just like how they they underestimated what they could do with it. They talked about how anybody can use them. Um, and it helps you like start small and define MVPs really quickly with simple design so you can test and iterate faster. So exactly what Andrew was saying, like I think sometimes we want to create, the really beautiful interfaces right away, for the first step. But if you can get something that feels real sooner, that isn't, the final product, but shows like the value and the solution to the customer, then you can be like, okay, now we can spend the time making it really look really good, perform really well, all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, so hopefully you find that helpful.
Yeah, good find.
Um, awesome. Well, if anyone has any more questions, be sure to add them in the chat. You can also join us right here on Zoom. Um, and there's a link pinned at the top of the chat on YouTube here. So if you actually want to join us on the call, you can actually chat with us in person and discuss like a specific problem you're facing, and we can help you solve it together. But otherwise, we have another question here that's kind of similar to the last one, the last longer one that we answered about if other people have the app idea, all that kind of stuff. So this person asked, we developed an MVP and we just found a stronger competitor startup that just released the same product. What should we do?
Good question, and very common where no ideas are new. Essentially, like there's nothing new under the sun. Um, and our recommendation would be, are they truly stronger? Do they just look stronger? What's their customer sentiment? But also um, understanding that like you could serve a much smaller market and be much more competitive, maybe appear stronger and actually win in a specific space. And I mean that by like niching down. Let's say you were serving all football teams, youth football, high school football, uh, NFL, right? Every single team, every single level, and you had a competitor. Let's say it's Team Snap is kind of like that, where they're serving a bunch of teams, both organized and not organized. But if you, let's say, focused on Pop Warner football and you were going to build tools and build a platform that's very specific to the problems that they have, you'd be able to speak to it more than anybody. You'd be able to create value for them, unlike the value you create for other people. So by niching down, you can, it's kind of this problem of like zooming in on a map. Like if you're at, let's say you're looking at a map and you're at, state view, you see certain things and you zoom in, you get to see more. So that kind of fidelity and the detail becomes more apparent when you focus on specific clients. So the recommendation would be, one, is it really better? And how would you find that out? Either through stories from those competitors and how they're delivering, and you kind of have a decision to compete in that market, or you have a decision to, to really niche down and say, hey, well, they might do X better for this customer. We're really going to focus on this customer who we think is the most underserved in this market. Yeah, you have a smaller opportunity, but you have a smaller opportunity overall, but a bigger opportunity to make a larger impact for those that targeted customer by owning more of that market segment. So it's kind of my recommendation. Obviously, the other one is like, hey, we just forfeit and wave the white flag, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. I think it also depends on your resources, and you see this happen all the time where just the bar is continuing to be raised, with technology and with the ability to ship out faster software, and understanding those customer needs is really the differentiator, that's going to help propel you and beat out those customers. So.
Awesome. So if anybody here on YouTube, or Mike, if you have a question, feel free to ask. We're here to help. But otherwise, we'll move on to this next question. The last one is kind of after the questioning of like, should we keep going or with all the competitors? This one's more in general of, what are the next steps to make after you create the MVP of your product? So you have your MVP in the wild, you maybe have between 10 and 100 customers. What are the next steps there?
Yeah, I think, the big thing there is making sure you have the foundational instrumentation, as we might call it, like you're measuring what customers are doing and what they're responding to, and not at at like a big brother level, but you're understanding like, we use this and we've talked about it many times here on this forum as well, but the pirate model. So like understanding the funnel metrics that you have. So it's 3 R's or 3 A's and 3 R's. R is the pirate model. I think we might have an article on this, or maybe it's part of that talk. But essentially, like awareness, like people can recognize and understand me. You as a brand. You have acquisition, in which case you're measuring like of the people that come to your landing page, how many of them convert into interest. And then you have activation of those that are interested, how many convert into an actual customer. You have retention. So once they become customers, how often are they coming back and what are they coming back for? You have referrals, like is our product interesting and valuable enough that they're telling other people about it? Are they referring their friends? Are they referring other folks? Yeah, thanks, Jacob. And then the last part is revenue here. So like, how do we optimize revenue? So when you launch and get something that you can measure and track, like we use this model a lot to then think through, okay, what do we do next? Like, what's the next thing we would do? And there's this framework in Lean UX by Jeff Gothelf, where essentially you pick out one of these business facing metrics. You pick out, let's say, we want to increase retention from, retention on our mobile app from 20 to, from 20%, or let's say retention on our mobile app from, someone visiting every 5 days to someone visiting every 2 days. Then you kind of will go through the process and say, hey, of our users, who do we want to move that metric for? Like, who do we want to see that behavior change for? And then from their lens, think about, well, what's the outcome they would need? Like, what's the value we would need to provide them to go for them to opening this up every 5 days to them coming back every 2 days? So you kind of take it off of like new feature, creation, all of this stuff, and put a customer lens on it. And a lot of times between like when you choose a customer segment of your existing, it could be everybody at first if you have 10 to 100, but go and talk to them and say like, hey, like, why aren't you using this more? Like, what else are you using in your workflow? Can you describe maybe how, where this fits along the journey as you're using it? And then you'll get some insights and start to understand, if you don't already, what they value most and what would really give them value for them to come back every day. And then once you have that opportunity, you would start thinking through the features that would get them there. So many times in retention, you're looking at nudges, or you're looking at like emailed reports, every few days that help bring them back into the tool and deliver value to them. You're thinking of ways that you can move that metric, but also like the way that you're counterpointing that is not, kind of dark design practices where, you know, you may have seen this on like Instagram or other apps where they're moving buttons to where they used to be. And so you're like, by default, you know, I think there was one, Jacob, I'm trying to remember what it was, like the notifications like moved, and like creating a story moved, and other things took their place that were, it's like dark patterns where, hey, now there's a shopping button in my Instagram app. That's odd. You know, where this thing is that was like most used. You're aligning the value you're delivering with, you know, really the value somebody's trying to get. And so like keeping customer centric in this phase is going to help you figure out like, how do we iterate on this faster and faster. And so likely there's, you know, if you ask any investor or anybody, should we focus on acquisition or retention, they're always going to say both. But there's a balance that you have to play, you know, with how small your team is. Like acquisition is all about, you know, storytelling. It's all about messaging, landing page conversions. It's about perception. Retention is all about the value you deliver behind the login. And so if those are ever out of line, where you promise the world, you know, on your landing page, and they get in and they join your app, and it doesn't live up to it, or it looks substantially different than the screenshots on your homepage, you're probably going to have a lot of churn where people might sign up and leave right away. And so I think balancing those two is really important, but choosing some metrics that are going to help you and the product team align. Because I think what a lot of companies do, and a lot of founders will do when they're working on their MVPs and they get them deployed, is like, we have all this roadmap stuff that we want to do. Let's just do these 5 things today. And so you don't really prioritize based on what's going to move the business forward. You really like are, and it's no one's fault. It's like kind of our, hey, we have these ideas we think are going to drive this growth, but coming back to what's going to help move the business forward, what's going to help us learn more, what's going to help us add more value to our customers, is going to help you to align your product team, that which could be one person at this point. If it's no code, it could be, you know, 5 people, whatever that is, to creating the most value that you can for your customers to help them win.
Awesome. Yeah, as you started talking, I'm like, oh, I know where I can find that picture of the pirate model.
Yeah.
Grab just the screen from that video. Yeah, awesome. Um, Trying to think if we have any more questions coming in from, none from YouTube right now, but if anybody on YouTube is watching and you have a question about design, customer research, product strategy, validating ideas, even, you know, getting started with software development, whatever it may be, ask away. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. And you can actually join us. I just put the link in the chat on YouTube. If you want to join us right here on Zoom, you can come in and like talk to us, you know, live in person, and, you know, articulate your question if you feel like it's too hard to share in chat. So yeah.
Sounds good. I would say the other thing, like as you think about, you know, launching MVP, just to something that I thought of is like, you know, you can ultimately, the goal of that lean UX exercise is for you to hypothesize around what's going to create value for your users, and kind of back it up with some insights and stories from them. But then also understand, like for each one of those features, what's the value that it's going to provide, and what's the level of effort for your team to do it. And so then you can kind of use your velocity, if you're using agile or something, to be able to say like, hey, what can we get done this release or this next release? How soon can we get this in so we can continue learning? But then the other part of that is like, once you get those opportunities in, and you think about the feedback you're getting from users, you think about you know, what they're actually doing, understanding how you prioritize that with value and effort is important. And there's also kind of another way we use it. We have a little book on ebook on the Moscow method, like thinking about the next release. What are the things that must be in there for you to deliver this value? And when you come up with ideas, let's say this would be a good example. When you come up with a hypothesis as part of that lean UX, to say, hey, we believe that if we implement, you know, daily personalized emails for these users, in retention will increase by X. You know, so a lot of times you might think like, oh, well, it has to be a super beautiful email. We have to design it to the nines. We have to integrate with SendGrid. We have to do all these things to make it. the challenge there in Moscow is to say like, well, what's really essential for us to get there? And so that email that looks, highly polished, highly designed could almost be peeled back into a text-based email with just a link in it that brings them back into the platform, or, just a text-based email with, formatted nicely, that you can really get to that desired outcome and that desired engagement without kind of pushing the fidelity. And I think the big challenge that you have as a startup, and really as any company, is you have constraints with time and with money that you're trying to iterate within. And so peeling back and saying like, is this essential, is going to be really important for you on, but doing more from a behavior change perspective where you're helping get your customers to more outcomes.
Awesome. We actually have a new question that I found. It's actually from 2 hours ago on Reddit. Um, Bender 1227 asks, I need to find the right tech partner. What should I be looking for? So he shares a little bit of background here. I ended up partnering with a skilled developer on a recent project that didn't go anywhere as they ended up getting really busy on other projects, so the project has stalled. I'm considering shutting down the project and find the right tech partners that has the skills to build a product and a business with me. My background's in business development, product management, and sales and marketing. I plan on handling the business side of the partnership, and I'm looking for a tech partner that can build a product and a business that I have in mind. The product that I want to build will start as an app with a database, and then down the road we'll create a website for the business where the customers will be able to use either the app or the website for our product. So what type of skills should I be looking for in a tech partner, and how can I make sure that they're committed to the project? As of right now, I have the entire business plan laid out. I just need to find the right person to go on this journey with me, but I'm having trouble finding that right person. Thanks.
Yeah, this is I think a common problem that a lot of founders have, looking for it. I think part of it is storytelling. Like, as a founder, you're always selling. So whether that's to investors, whether that's to potential customers, whether that's to people joining you on board, you have to be really good at communicating your vision for this and what the opportunity is. And I would also say it's going to depend if you're looking for, a partner for equity, or if you're looking for a tech partner to hire. I think those are two different things. But from a skill perspective, like I think maybe before the skills, like aligning on principles and aligning on what you value, like being able to, rather than, some tech partners might be super build focused, like, hey, just tell me what to build and we'll go do it. Other tech partners might be more inclined to join you on those kind of business, this business journey where they're interviewing customers with you. You're really figuring out like, are we moving the needle the right way for the customers, and being able to contribute to the roadmap from that idea, and then go into the skills part where you're transitioning. Hey, what should we do, and what's our hypothesis, what's the opportunity theory, kind of as we talked about already, and then like what's the fastest way for us to learn if people want this. So taking it much more iteratively than, hey, we have this offering, we just need to go build it, and figuring out like, how do you scale that offering down so you can still deliver value, whether that's through a Zapier, Google Sheets, whether that's through Bubble or something else, where you might not need a scalable architecture yet. Hey, if you can get 10 customers, that's great. If you can get 100, great. Any of these no-code tools that we've mentioned, you could support those customers on. And even with Bubble, there's I'm trying to look it up right now, but there's companies who have raised substantial amounts of money with their MVPs and their products being built in Bubble. So one of those is Dividend, who raised 345 million from a fund. I'm trying to see some of the other ones here. But there's a lot of startups where you don't need to go scalable. Like the customer is not going to know any different. So really, like, you're delivering the value to them. Sure, things, if you're passionate about your craft of design or development, you as a creator might notice little things. We can't really approach it from this system set. Like, your customers don't think about it that way. Your customers really care about the journey you're helping them on. So finding the right tech partner is going to depend, as I mentioned before, on, are you looking for a co-founder, a technical co-founder who's going to join you on the journey for equity? Or are you looking for a company like Headway or something similar, where they're going to come along the journey with you, guide you, help you kind of suss out the right things, and then build it in an iterative way.
My question is where can he find people? Like, like you kind of said what to look for, but like my question is like, where do you look? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you could go LinkedIn. I mean, I guess you could go to job search, you could post a job posting, but in your mind, like, where do you think's the best place to look?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those. I think the most, I don't know, most connections that are going to be fruitful seem to come from networking, like more organic networking, like being a part of, startup groups on Meetup, being a part of, attending events, meeting people, and kind of just telling your story and what you're building and saying what you're looking for, and like finding a community like that, whether that's on Slack or a community that meets on Zoom, or even there's some communities out there we mentioned last time, like Kinetic, where if you're looking for a co-founder in tech, like they'll match you with somebody. You'll be able to meet people individually. So I think like leveraging, yeah, just leveraging networks and people and kind of putting an ask out to your community. I've seen a lot of companies do this really well that are starting up, where they'll do a monthly newsletter and kind of what their asks are. Hey, here's the updates, and that could serve for a couple purposes for people, that are kind of cheerleaders in your corner. So your friends and family and colleagues, but also, to send to investors. So if you're talking with investors and you're telling them, what you're going to do, like following up with this email every month that shows you and shows them the traction. And then saying like what an ask is. Hey, we're really looking for this person. Like being able to have that ask out there and really leverage the power of your networks and of your people, I think is going to be helpful on that journey. You could always, try cold in mailing on LinkedIn. I think that is dwindling based on all the activity that's happening there, but it could be effective. Um, Using other networks, like being active on Twitter and really giving back to the community and giving feedback and all of that could be fruitful. If you say, hey, like I'm also looking for a co-founder to join me on this. So building in the open is an option where you can get a lot of people bought into the vision and find people that are interested in joining you on the effort. So there's no right way. I think the best thing to do is just to kind of come from a not a place of need, but come with an ask and come with a goal and try to align that with the networks that you're on. There are other boards like Angel.co. I think you can list for co-founder, for equity on there where people can search, and there's hundreds of thousands of people on those types of communities as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew. Um, okay, I have one more question, unless I missed any over here in the chat, from Reddit, and I think it's kind of a fun one because I think this can happen a lot. It's kind of similar to like the competitor thing, but might not be a competitor because it might be serving a different market. Um, but on Reddit, Cartoonist One asks, um, Airbnb for group fitness classes. So they ask, let's say I want to start a peer-to-peer marketplace for group fitness classes, dance, yoga, all that kind of stuff, where you don't need expensive equipment and you're having an instructor and a peer group significantly improves the experience. The host will teach the class at their location, so it could be at their home, in a public park, or wherever location they get. Guests can find and book these fitness classes through the app. Anybody can watch, free videos on YouTube, but there's something about having an instructor and experiencing that together. Um, Lots of people could teach these classes. They're saying, um, so let's say this is my business idea. I need to build a marketplace website, also on mobile and iOS, Android. Marketplace facilitates discovery, scheduling, booking, and payments. I think you kind of get the idea there. So how do you go about building this business? And someone did say, so you want to build something like ClassPass, which already exists, but for independent instructors and not studios, because those are different markets who hold classes in the park. And the person said essentially. So thoughts on that, like finding independent or fitness experts to coach you and get classes. What would you do?
Well, so this is a marketplace, obviously, where you need both sides to tango. So you need the fitness instructors. Everyone wants more business from a fitness perspective, right? All your instructors are going to want, hey, rather than being under this other brand, you could build your own. You could have direct access to your customers. Like, hey, that sounds great. but really you have the consumer side of it. And the big thing to look at from an inside side is like being able to test it and understanding what your opportunity is there, because you have things like Peloton that are offering all these live classes. You have things like some friends of ours over at future.co, where they're matching you up with an instructor and a personal trainer. So you have like this, the market's there from a provider standpoint, from a trainer standpoint, like they likely want to be able to do their own, and an app would help them do that. But then you have the consumer side, which is more to overcome because of so many changes in the market with, just due to COVID and everyone being remote. Like these sprung up like crazy, even for, we have some friends that are at some franchisees for different fitness groups and classes and things like that. Like they had to adapt really quickly, rather than people coming into their studios. They need to figure out a way to do it on digital, and Zoom wasn't working for like a bunch of various reasons. They had to, a lot of cases, build their own and really try to promote, this remote only world that a lot of people are adapting to. So, the way that I would approach building it is like, talking to instructors and interviewing them, also interviewing consumers and trying to understand, hey, who left Peloton and why did they leave Peloton? Like understanding their motivations and why it wasn't checking. What did they move to, right? Was their choice to do nothing? Did they feel like they learned enough, so they're just happy to go on their own? Really like trying to figure out, and we talk about this all the time, but like the context is going to drive the value that we can provide. So understanding where someone is in their fitness journey is going to help us hone in on a specific segment. So hey, we're serving end customers and end users that have tried group classes, are struggling to make progress with it, and really need accountability, right? So like there's like likely a combination of a job statement that needs to happen based on their context. So for here it'd be trying to answer to that personalization and that like hands-on approach to it, rather than hey, it's just a group class that you attend live. There likely needs to be some other offering. And that's just an example of some insights you might find as you interview people in the market for classes. But that context is going to help you define out, who do you serve. So in launching and building that business, it's talking to both sides, understanding how they buy now, like how do people get paid right now for fitness classes? Like what's the business model for that? Is ClassPass and all these other things, like what's the percentage they're taking of this? And then figure out, like from a business standpoint, can you pay that? And can you get customers to pay that? And almost like this manual approach where you could start with an email list. You could start in your hometown. You could start with people and be able to build up some sort of mechanism for you to deliver, saying, hey, here's the upcoming classes this week. Here's the membership. Stripe has a payments portal that you just would enter your information into. You can send them to a branded page on Stripe. Like you don't even have to integrate that with an app. It would set up a subscription and be totally good for you. And then you could pay the instructors on the back end every month. So you could do that manually so you get to a certain point. But I guess the big part of this is like, go talk to the customers that you're looking to serve, both sides of the marketplace, try to get them to sign up and to commit, into some sort of offer, and then figure out a mechanism for you to deliver upcoming classes, courses. That could be, SMS, that could be over email, that could be manually. You could manage lists in an email, in an email sequencing tool that would send out an email every Friday. You could leverage Zapier to like add classes in. You could coordinate like a Google form to push to a Google Sheet. And when a new line gets edited or gets added, Zapier would fire off a text to somebody through a Twilio integration saying, hey, a new class is added for this Friday, or the class time has changed. So there's a lot of different things that you could do to mimic and provide the value, but mimic the mechanism so that you can learn what works and what doesn't. If your goal is to, let's say, overpass or like outpace ClassPass, like your approach is going to be much different than if your approach is to say, hey, I want to build a solid lifestyle business, and I don't want to take that much of the market. I kind of want to serve the Midwest. Like your approach is going to be much different, and the amount of funding you would raise would be different, and who you develop partnerships would be different. So I guess the answer is still, it depends.
Yeah, always, Awesome. We have a question from Floss Daily on YouTube, uh, asking different ways to validate your idea that doesn't require a semi-usable type MVP, such as holding meetings to explain the concept, get feedback, and see if there is a want there, like pre-MVP methods.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like validation, in most cases for us is about creating those doors. Like, doesn't even have to be a usable type MVP, could just be an offer. I'm trying to think of like in this example that we just talked about for fitness classes, like you could ask somebody if they'd be interested in them. And then you could just have a screen with, hey, here's the 4 coaches we have and here's what they teach. Any of these interested to you, bring them into the classes they offer. And this could just be like, it could be on a printed sheet if you wanted to. And you just say, hey, here's the classes they have coming up. They're every Wednesday at this time. These other classes are every Friday. Which ones are you interested in? And you could almost be concierge to book them. And so if they bought it, that would kind of what we would consider validation. If they said, oh, I'm not ready yet, but sign me up for a list, like that's some sort of validation as well. But I would say like you can fake a lot of that, in person talking with people if you can kind of peel back from your desire to want to always build something into like how can we provide the value, which in the Airbnb group class is like getting an instructor and providing a class to them that's purchasing. Like you can do that manually over email. You can do that a few different ways without even building a usable MVP, and just give out a Zoom link as an example. So I think um, yeah, like landing, even landing page tests, like walking them through, understanding their perception. I think all of that stuff can be good. What we typically look for ahead of a specific offer is just the problem space. So like once we identify who the customer is, um, go and talk to them and understand, like, do they know that they have a problem? Have they tried to solve it in certain ways? Are they currently paying for any solutions? Have they invested other time and effort into trying to solve it? What's it really valuable to them? What's the value to them? And then that kind of leads us on a journey to what a solution and an offer might be. So even that validation of that there is a problem, that it exists, that they've tried to solve it, that they've tried substitutes and alternatives before, is super helpful for you to continue pushing forward. Conversations are good. I think still what we find though, customers will lie to you with the best intentions, meaning that they'll say, oh, I would definitely use that, and you'll see this a lot, and there's a book called The Mom Test of like, oh, this is great, yeah, I would definitely use it, and then it comes time to purchase, and like you give them an opportunity to take a step forward and they don't. And I think that's where a lot of startups run into trouble, is they get a lot of good feedback before they allow customers to take an action and actually prove it with a card or a sign up or a purchase order or anything like that. And then they get on the back half and they start building it. They don't really have any true validation or customer commitments for that. So I would definitely recommend to craft some sort of offer when you get to presenting a solution to somebody, even in a conversation of saying like, oh, well, great, well, I'll sign you up for that, and I'll send the invoice over, and you could even do it over QuickBooks. It doesn't have to be automated in Stripe or anything. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Andrew. Celino's been asking questions about automating like design tokens between Figma and React, Angular, and Vue apps. And so I just we don't have Billy's blog post out yet. It'll hopefully go out by the end of the week. But I just shared some of the links that he mentioned in the article from from the draft, and that totally helped him out. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah,
2 labs is huge.
yep,
Two
yep.
labs is gonna be great. Let us know what you find there, Selena, if you dig in and use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I think we can wrap things up. So we have, let's put a link in the chat here. We have a couple events coming up, and we'll be adding another one later today, but we can share that one next week on open office hours. I can just share my screen and just walk through what we have coming up. All right, so actually tomorrow, Jess from our development team will be talking about React Native and specifically React navigation with TypeScript. So if you're interested in learning about that, and she said she's gonna walk through common mistakes that happen when you're setting that's kind of thing up, and she's gonna walk through like how you troubleshoot that, which is gonna be really really cool. And then the other one we'll be doing next week is from idea to venture launch, prototypes and feedback loops. And that's going to be with Clint on our design team and Ryan on the strategy team. It's going to be kind of like a live case study with Q&A. So we're going to unpack the entire process we took, um, for a project called Ditto that we've been working on. It's a relationship improvement platform. So just unpacking the entire process from talking with customers to validate the idea, testing design ideas, understanding like what people want when it comes to improving a relationship, within some kind of tool. Like what would that look like? How would that work? So if you're a startup founder, designer, strategist, if you work in a product team, this is for you. You're going to learn like kind of what it takes and to do it effectively to validate an idea and start building prototypes. So there's a lot they're going to unpack here, and it's a great place to get your questions answered again, just like today. So I put a link in the chat there for the event, so you can get access to this. Um, and I know on February 25th, Ryan and Robert for Exploring Product, which is a new podcast that'll be coming soon. They'll be interviewing Douglas Ferguson. He wrote a couple books, Magical Meetings, and what's the other one? I'm trying to remember. Douglas.
Beyond the prototype.
There we go. Yep, Beyond the Prototype. So if you're interested in hearing, it's going to be a really casual interview with him, and we'll be live on YouTube again and on Zoom. So if you have questions for him, like we'll be, Ryan and Robert will be unpacking a lot of conversations with him. But if you have questions to ask Douglas, that's the time to join. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be sending out if you're in the Manifest newsletter on our website, or if you attended an event in the past, we'll be sending out emails on that. Otherwise, just check out our website or look on YouTube here. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and you can get updates on all that kind of stuff. If you liked the conversations today, hit the like button. We appreciate that. And otherwise, thanks everybody for joining us. And it's always an honor to be able to help people kind of reach their goals and get unstuck every week. So thanks again, Andrew. Always appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience. Do you have any more thoughts for today?
I don't have any thoughts. Yeah, just thanks everybody for the questions, and excited to keep up with everyone's progress. We'll see you next week. Same
Awesome.
time, same place.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.
All right.